Inject him again. Dr. Vincent Harper's voice was ice cold. And double the dosage. The nurse hesitated, syringe trembling in her hand. Doctor, he's only 6 years old. This amount could... Did I ask for your opinion? Harper grabbed the syringe and plunged it into the small boy's arm himself. This child is worth $50,000 a month to me. The longer he stays silent, the longer his father keeps paying. Now get out. 6-year-old Ethan Crawford didn't flinch. He couldn't. His eyes stared at nothing, his body limp in the wheelchair, trapped in a chemical prison designed by the very man his father trusted most. But 300 miles away, a grieving young mother named Sarah Mitchell was about to accept a job that would change everything. She had no medical degree, no fancy credentials, just broken heart and eyes that knew how to see what others missed. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below which city you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel around the world. The phone call came at 3:47 in the morning. James Crawford jerked awake, his heart already pounding before he even answered. Mr. Crawford, this is Dr. Harper. Your son had another episode tonight. We've increased his medication. He's stable now, but I need you to understand something. James pressed the phone harder against his ear. What happened? Ethan attempted to make sounds during his evening assessment. This kind of unpredictable behavior indicates his condition is deteriorating. I'm recommending we move to Phase 3 of our treatment protocol. What does Phase 3 mean? It means stronger sedation, more control. Mr. Crawford, I've told you before, your son's brain is fundamentally damaged. These random vocalizations aren't progress, they're symptoms of neurological chaos. If we don't suppress them, he could hurt himself. James closed his eyes. Do whatever you think is best, doctor. I always do. I'll send the new prescription tomorrow. And Mr. Crawford, stop hoping for miracles. Acceptance is the healthiest path forward for both of you. The line went dead. James sat in the darkness of his bedroom, staring at the ceiling. $12 million. That's how much he had spent over 6 years trying to help his son. The best doctors, the most advanced treatments, the most expensive equipment, none of it had made any difference. His wife, Emily, had died giving birth to Ethan. Complications during delivery. By the time the doctors stabilized the baby, the damage was already done. Autism, Down syndrome, paralysis from the waist down. He may never walk, talk, or recognize you, the specialists had told him. Prepare yourself for a lifetime of care. James had refused to accept it. He was a billionaire, for God's sake. He had built a tech empire from nothing. He had solved problems that everyone said were impossible. Surely he could find a way to reach his own son. But 6 years later, Ethan remained locked in silence, and James was running out of fight. The next morning, Margaret Chen knocked on his office door. Mr. Crawford, we have a situation. James didn't look up from his computer. What now? Linda quit. This morning. No notice. She said she couldn't take it anymore. That's the third maid this month. Fourth, sir. Patricia left 2 weeks ago. James finally raised his head. What's wrong with this house, Margaret? Why can't anyone stay? Margaret hesitated. She had worked for James for 15 years, since before Emily died, before Ethan was born. She had watched this family fall apart piece by piece. It's not the house, sir. It's the silence. People can handle hard work. They can't handle feeling like they're living in a tomb. James flinched at the word. Tomb. That's exactly what this place had become. Find someone else, he said quietly. Someone who isn't afraid of silence. I already have a candidate. She's waiting downstairs. Send her up. 3 minutes later, Sarah Mitchell walked into his office. James noticed her eyes first. They were brown, ordinary, nothing special except for what they carried. A weight, a depth, the kind of look that came from surviving something that should have broken you. Sit down, Miss Mitchell. She sat without hesitating. Her back was straight, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget or look around at the expensive furniture. She simply waited. Your resume says you worked at 3 different households in the past 2 years. Why so many moves? My circumstances changed, Mr. Crawford. Changed how? Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. My daughter died 4 months ago. She was 11 days old. After that, I couldn't stay in one place very long. Everything reminded me of her. James felt something shift in his chest. He hadn't expected honesty. Most candidates performed, smiled too much, talked too much, tried too hard to impress. This woman just told the truth. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, and meant it. Thank you. I have a son. His name is Ethan. He's 6 years old. James paused, choosing his words carefully. He has multiple disabilities. He can't walk. He can't speak. Most of the time, he doesn't respond to anything or anyone. The doctors say his brain is too damaged. Sarah listened without changing expression. Every maid I've hired quits within weeks, James continued. They say the silence is too heavy. They say my son makes them uncomfortable. They say this house feels like death. What do you say, Mr. Crawford? The question caught him off guard. What? Everyone else has opinions about your house and your son. What do you say? James stared at her. No one had ever asked him that before. I say my son is still in there somewhere. I say the doctors are wrong. I say that one day somehow someone will find a way to reach him. His voice cracked. I say that because if I don't believe it, I have nothing left. Sarah nodded slowly. Then I'd like to work for you, Mr. Crawford. Why? You haven't even seen Ethan yet. Because you haven't given up. 4 months ago, I held my daughter while she took her last breath. There was nothing I could do. No doctor, no medicine, no amount of money could save her. I know what it feels like to be helpless. Sarah leaned forward slightly. But your son is alive, and if there's any chance at all, that he's still in there waiting to be found, then I want to be part of finding him. James was silent for a long moment. You start tomorrow, he finally said. 6 a.m. Margaret will show you everything. Sarah stood and walked to the door. Then she stopped. Mr. Crawford, what's his favorite color? What? Ethan. What's his favorite color? James opened his mouth to answer, then realized he didn't know. In 6 years of doctors and therapists and treatments, no one had ever asked about his son's favorite color, including him. I don't know, he admitted. Sarah nodded. Then maybe that's where I'll start. She left. James sat alone in his office, shaken by a question he should have asked years ago. The next morning, Sarah arrived at 5:45, 15 minutes early. Margaret met her at the service entrance and handed her a uniform. You'll wear this. Plain professional, no perfume. Ethan is sensitive to strong smells. Understood. Your duties are simple, cleaning laundry kitchen assistance. You do not enter Ethan's wing without permission. You do not speak to him unless Mr. Crawford approves. You do not interfere with his therapy sessions. Clear. Clear. Margaret studied her face. The last girl cried her first day, said Ethan's eyes gave her nightmares. I've seen worse than empty eyes, Mrs. Chen. Have you? I've seen a baby's eyes close forever. Nothing is worse than that. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Come, I'll show you the house. They walked through room after room. Sarah noted the details without commenting. The expensive artwork that no one looked at, the pristine furniture that no one used, the thick silence that pressed against the walls like something alive. Then they reached the east wing. This is Ethan's area, Margaret said quietly. His bedroom, therapy room, and private garden. Mr. Crawford spends most of his time here. Can I see him? Margaret hesitated. He won't respond. Don't expect anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just want to see him. They entered the therapy room. Ethan sat in his wheelchair near the window. He was small for 6 with soft brown hair and delicate features. His father's jaw, his mother's cheekbones. He would have been beautiful if there had been any life in his eyes, but there wasn't. He stared at nothing, his face blank, his body perfectly still. Sarah felt her heart crack open. Not because of his emptiness, but because of something behind it. something she couldn't name or explain. A flicker, a presence, a soul trapped behind glass. "Hello, Ethan," she said softly. No response. She crouched down to his level, staying 3 feet away. "My name is Sarah. I'm going to be helping around the house. I'm not going to bother you. I just wanted to say hello." Nothing. Not a blink. Not a twitch. But Sarah didn't look away. She stayed there looking at him, really looking for almost a full minute. Margaret shifted uncomfortably. "We should go." Sarah stood slowly. "Thank you for introducing us, Mrs. Chen." As they walked out, Margaret glanced back at her. "Most people can't look at him that long. Most people aren't looking for what I'm looking for." "And what's that?" Sarah paused at the doorway. "A way in." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan's eyes. Everyone called them empty. But Sarah had seen something else. Not emptiness, silence. There was a difference. Empty meant nothing was there. Silent meant something was there but couldn't speak. Sarah had learned that difference in the 11 days she spent with her daughter. Baby Grace never cried much. She was quiet, peaceful, content to be held. The doctors said she was too quiet. They ran tests, found nothing. Then one morning, Sarah woke up and Grace was gone. Sudden infant death syndrome. No warning, no explanation, just silence where there had been life. But in those 11 days, Sarah had learned to read her daughter's silence, the way her tiny fingers moved when she was happy, the way her breathing changed when she was uncomfortable, the way her eyes tracked light even when she made no sound. Grace had communicated, just not in ways the doctors measured. Maybe Ethan was doing the same thing. The first week passed slowly. Sarah learned the rhythms of the house. James woke at 5 every morning and went straight to Ethan's room. He would sit beside his son's bed and talk for an hour about the weather, about business, about memories of Emily. He spoke as if Ethan could understand every word. Maybe he could. Therapists came and went throughout the day. Physical therapy at 9, occupational therapy at 11, speech therapy at 2. A parade of specialists with clipboards and concerned faces trying techniques that never worked. Sarah watched from a distance, cleaning nearby rooms, folding laundry within earshot. She noticed things. She noticed that Ethan's shoulders tensed whenever someone touched him without warning. She noticed his breathing changed when people spoke too loudly near him. She noticed his fingers twitched just slightly, almost invisibly, whenever the therapists used their calm, professional voices. "He's retreating," Sarah muttered to herself one afternoon. "They're scaring him without knowing it." On day 5, she noticed something else. She was mopping the hallway outside Ethan's room when she heard a sound. Running water. Someone had left a bathroom faucet on down the hall. Sarah went to turn it off. As she passed Ethan's open door, she saw him. His fingers were moving. Not the usual tiny twitch, real movement. His hand was rising slightly from the armrest of his wheelchair, his fingers extended toward the sound of the water. Sarah froze. She stood completely still, barely breathing, watching. Ethan's eyes were still unfocused, still distant, but his hand was reaching towards something. The water. Sarah's heart began to pound. She didn't turn off the faucet. Instead, she walked slowly, silently to a spot where she could see Ethan better, without disturbing him. His fingers continued moving for another 30 seconds. Then someone shut off the water from another room, and his hand dropped back to the armrest. Gone. Like it never happened. But Sarah had seen it. She had seen it. That night, she started a notebook. Day 5, she wrote. 4:23 p.m. Ethan responded to running water. Fingers extended toward sound. Duration approximately 30 seconds. First observed voluntary movement. She underlined the last sentence 3 times. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah conducted her own experiments. She would accidentally leave faucets running while cleaning near Ethan's room. She would fill glasses with water, slowly letting the sound carry. She would open windows when it rained and watch him from the corner of her eye. Every single time Ethan responded. His fingers moved when water ran. His breathing slowed when rain fell outside. His head turned slightly, almost imperceptibly, toward the sound of liquid being poured. Water. The connection was water. Sarah filled page after page in her notebook. Dates, times, observations, theories. She drew diagrams of Ethan's movements. She noted which sounds triggered responses and which didn't. Running water, strong response. Rain, moderate response. Bath sounds, strong response. Ocean sounds from a therapy speaker, no response. Music, no response. Human voices, minimal response. Mechanical sounds, no response. Only real water, only the genuine sound and presence of water. Why Sarah didn't know, but she knew this was important. More important than anything the expensive specialists had discovered. On day 16, she asked Margaret a question that would change everything. "Is there a pool on the property?" Margaret looked up from her paperwork. "Yes, in the back garden. Why, is it still working?" "No, Mr. Crawford had it covered after his wife passed away. Mrs. Crawford was the only one who used it. He couldn't bear to look at it anymore." Sarah nodded. "Thank you." That evening, she knocked on James's office door. "Mr. Crawford, do you have a moment?" James looked up from his computer. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. 3 days of stubble on his jaw. A glass of whiskey sat untouched on his desk. "What is it, Miss Mitchell?" Sarah stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. "I need to show you something." She placed her notebook on his desk. James stared at it. "What's this?" 2 weeks of observations. Every time your son responded to something. Every movement, every sound, every change in his behavior. James's hand trembled slightly as he opened the notebook. He began reading. Sarah watched his face change. The exhaustion shifted to confusion. The confusion shifted to disbelief. The disbelief shifted to something she hadn't seen in him before. Hope. "This can't be right," he whispered. "You're saying he responds to water?" "Yes." "Running water, rain?" "Yes." But the therapists, they've tried sensory stimulation, music, lights, textures. They tried artificial sounds, recordings, speakers. Ethan doesn't respond to fake water, Mr. Crawford. He responds to real water, the sound of it, maybe even the feel of it. I don't know why, but the pattern is clear. James kept reading, his eyes moving faster now. When he reached the last page, he looked up at Sarah with tears in his eyes. 2 weeks. You've been here 2 weeks, and you've documented more than 3 years of professional therapists. I'm not a therapist, sir. I don't have their training, but I know how to watch someone who can't speak. I learned that from my daughter. James closed the notebook. His hands were shaking visibly now. "The pool," he said slowly. "You want me to open the pool?" "Yes." "I closed it because Emily loved it. She swam every morning. After she died, I couldn't—" His voice broke. "I couldn't look at it without seeing her." Sarah leaned forward. "Mr. Crawford, I can't imagine how painful that is. But your son might need that pool. He might need it more than anything else we can give him." James was silent for a long time. Finally, he stood and walked to the window. He stared out at the garden, where the covered pool sat like a grave. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. "I'll have it uncovered tomorrow. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Miss Mitchell. Don't thank me until we know if this actually works." Sarah picked up her notebook. At the door, she paused. "Mr. Crawford, your son's favorite color might be blue." "What?" "Water is blue. Or at least that's how we think of it. Maybe that's why." She left. James stood at the window until midnight, staring at the covered pool and thinking about his wife. The next morning, a crew arrived to uncover the pool. Sarah watched from Ethan's window as they removed the heavy tarp and cleaned the basin. The water filtration system hummed to life. Within hours, the pool sparkled under the California sun for the first time in 7 years. At 2 o'clock, Sarah asked James for permission to take Ethan outside. "I want to be there," James said. "Of course." They walked together, Sarah pushing Ethan's wheelchair, James a few steps behind. The afternoon was warm and clear. Birds sang in the garden trees. As they approached the pool, Sarah watched Ethan's face. Nothing at first. The same blank stare, the same distant eyes. Then they got closer. Ethan's fingers began to move. His shoulders, usually hunched and tense, slowly relaxed. His head turned toward the sound of water circulating through the filters. And then, for the first time since Sarah had arrived, his lips curved upward. A smile. Faint, fragile, barely there, but unmistakably a smile. James made a choking sound behind her. Sarah parked the wheelchair in a shaded spot near the pool's edge. She sat down on the warm concrete beside Ethan, saying nothing, letting him experience this moment without interference. They stayed there for an hour. Ethan didn't speak or make eye contact, but he was present in a way Sarah had never seen before. His fingers moved constantly, reaching toward the water. His breathing was slow and peaceful. His smile came and went like sunlight through clouds. When they finally went back inside, James grabbed Sarah's arm. "How did you know?" he demanded. "How the hell did you know?" "I didn't know. I watched. I paid attention. That's all. That's all. That's all." James was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "In 6 years, no one has ever made my son smile, and you did it in 2 weeks by watching." Sarah pulled her arm gently from his grip. "Your son has been trying to communicate for years, Mr. Crawford. Everyone was just listening for the wrong things." She walked away, leaving James standing alone in the hallway, weeping, with a hope he had almost forgotten how to feel. Over the next week, the pool became sacred ground. Every morning after breakfast, Sarah took Ethan outside. They sat by the water for 1 hour, sometimes 2. She read to him, pointing to pictures of ocean animals and saying their names. She hummed softly. She let her fingers trail in the water and watched him follow the movement with his eyes. Progress was slow, but undeniable. Ethan began making sounds. Not words, but intentional noises, little hums when they arrived at the pool, soft sighs when they had to leave. He started tracking Sarah's movements. When she walked around the pool, his head turned to follow her. He reached for the water with both hands now, not just his fingers. Sarah documented everything. Her notebook grew thick with observations. James joined them, sometimes sitting at a distance watching. He didn't interfere. He seemed afraid that his presence might break whatever magic was happening. On day 24, Sarah decided it was time. She had purchased a small flotation vest and waterproof swim shorts for Ethan. She checked every strap twice, 3 times. Then she looked at James. "I want to take him in the water." James went pale. "In the water? But he can't, his paralysis." "The vest will support him. I'll hold him the entire time. He won't go under, I promise." "What if something goes wrong?" "Then I'll get him out immediately. Mr. Crawford, your son has been reaching for this water every single day. He wants to be in it. I can see it." James ran his hands through his hair. He paced back and forth along the pool's edge. Finally, he stopped and looked at his son. Ethan was watching the water. His fingers were moving. That small, fragile smile was on his lips. "Okay," James whispered. "Okay, do it." Sarah knelt beside Ethan's wheelchair. "Hey, buddy. We're going to try something new today. We're going to go in the water together. I'll hold you the whole time. Is that okay?" No response. But he didn't tense up. He didn't retreat. Sarah lifted him carefully from the wheelchair. He was lighter than she expected, his body thin and fragile from years of limited movement. She held him against her chest, feeling his heartbeat against her own. "Here we go," she murmured. She walked slowly down the pool steps into the shallow end. The moment Ethan's feet touched the water, his whole body went rigid. His arms locked against his sides. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. Sarah stopped immediately. "It's okay. I've got you. I'm right here. We don't have to go further." She stood still, waist deep in the water, holding him tight, waiting. 30 seconds passed, a minute. Then slowly, Ethan's body began to relax. His arms loosened. His breathing slowed. His head tilted back, face turned up toward the sun. Sarah moved deeper, letting the water rise to his chest. The flotation vest kept him buoyant. Her arms stayed firmly around him. And then it happened. Ethan laughed. Not a small sound, not a hint of amusement. A real laugh, clear, bright, and utterly joyful. Sarah's knees nearly buckled. Tears poured down her face. She had never heard him make any sound like this. No one had. In 6 years of his life, Ethan Crawford had never laughed. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Oh my God, Ethan!" He laughed again and again. His hands splashed clumsily at the water. His face was transformed with pure, radiant happiness. Behind her, Sarah heard a crash. She turned to see James standing at the pool's edge. A coffee mug lay shattered at his feet, dark liquid spreading across the concrete. His face was white. His whole body was shaking. "He laughed," James said, his voice cracking. "My son laughed." "Yes. He's never in 6 years, he's never—" James's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees on the hard concrete, sobs tearing through his chest. 6 years of grief, 6 years of silence, 6 years of feeling like a failure as a father, all of it poured out of him in that moment. Sarah kept floating with Ethan, moving in slow circles, giving James space to feel everything he had been suppressing. Ethan laughed once more. Then he settled into a peaceful calm, his fingers trailing through the water, his eyes more alive than Sarah had ever seen them. 20 minutes later, Sarah carried him out of the pool. James was waiting with towels. His eyes were red and swollen. His hands trembled as he reached for his son. "Let me hold him," he said. "Please." Sarah transferred Ethan carefully into his father's arms. James held him tight, not the careful, clinical way he usually handled the fragile body, but the desperate embrace of a father who had just witnessed the impossible. "Thank you," James sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you." "We're not done," Sarah said softly. "This is just the beginning." That night, James couldn't sleep. He sat in Ethan's room until 3 a.m, watching his son breathe. The boy looked different, even in sleep more peaceful, more present. But James's mind was troubled. He kept thinking about what Sarah had said. "Your son has been trying to communicate for years. Everyone was just listening for the wrong things." If that was true, if Ethan had been trying to communicate all along, why hadn't the doctors seen it? Why hadn't Dr. Harper, with all his credentials and experience, noticed what a grieving Maid discovered in 2 weeks? James went to his office and pulled out a file he hadn't examined in years. Ethan's complete medical history from Dr. Vincent Harper. He began reading. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Standard assessments, routine observations, medication adjustments. But as James read more carefully, certain phrases began to stand out. Patient displayed unexpected vocalization during session. Recommended increasing sedative dosage to prevent future episodes. Patient showed response to external stimuli, running water in adjacent room. Noted as anomaly. No further investigation recommended. Father inquired about hydrotherapy options. Strongly advised against due to risk of overstimulation and behavioral instability. James read that last entry 3 times. Dr. Harper had known. He had documented Ethan's response to water 3 years ago, and he had deliberately told James not to pursue it. But why James kept reading, his hands trembling. Phase 2 sedation protocol successful. Patient compliance significantly improved. Recommend maintaining current dosage indefinitely. Patient silence is permanent and irreversible. Managing family expectations is critical to continued treatment relationship. Father shows signs of excessive hope. Consider scheduling consultation to reinforce realistic prognosis and ensure treatment continuity. Treatment continuity. The phrase burned in James's mind. He grabbed his laptop and searched for Dr. Vincent Harper. What he found made his blood run cold. 3 malpractice complaints in the past decade. 2 settled quietly out of court. 1 still under investigation. All involving children with developmental disabilities, all involving allegations of over-medication and unnecessary treatment. James found an article from the Los Angeles Times published 8 months ago. Parents accuse prominent neurologist of systematic child abuse. Dr. Vincent Harper, a renowned specialist in pediatric neurology, is facing mounting allegations from families who claim he deliberately prolonged their children's treatment for financial gain. "He told us our daughter would never improve," said Maria Gonzalez, mother of a patient who was in Harper's care for 5 years. "He kept her sedated so she couldn't show progress. When we finally took her to another doctor, she started speaking within 6 months." James slammed the laptop shut. his vision blurred with rage. His hands curled into fists so tight his knuckles went white. For 6 years he had trusted this man, paid him $50,000 every month, let him inject chemicals into his son's body, believed him when he said there was no hope. And all along, Vincent Harper had been poisoning Ethan to protect his income stream. James picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "David, it's James Crawford. I need the best malpractice attorney you know, right now, tonight." His old friend's voice was groggy with sleep. "James, what's going on? It's 3 a.m. Someone has been hurting my son for money, and I'm going to destroy them." There was a long pause. "I'll make some calls. Give me 2 hours." "Thank you." James hung up and looked at the file on his desk. Hundreds of pages documenting 6 years of abuse disguised as treatment. Tomorrow he would show Sarah what he had found. Together, they would build a case that would end Vincent Harper's career forever. But tonight, James needed to do something else first. He walked back to Ethan's room and sat beside the bed. His son was still sleeping peacefully, unaware of everything that had been done to him. James took Ethan's small hand in his own. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. I trusted the wrong people. I let them hurt you." His voice broke completely. "But I promise you, son, I swear on your mother's grave, I will never let anyone hurt you again. And I will spend the rest of my life making this right." Ethan's fingers twitched slightly in his sleep. James held on tighter and wept until dawn. The sun had barely risen when James showed Sarah the files. She sat across from him in his office reading page after page, her face growing paler with each document. Her hands trembled, her jaw clenched so tight James could see the muscles straining beneath her skin. "3 years ago," Sarah whispered, "he documented Ethan's response to water 3 years ago, and told me to avoid hydrotherapy, said it would cause behavioral instability." Sarah looked up, her eyes blazing. "He knew. This monster knew your son could respond to water, and he buried it. He buried it because a responsive patient is a patient who might improve, and a patient who improves eventually stops needing treatment." James's voice was cold as steel. Ethan was worth $50,000 a month to him. Why would he let that end? Sarah stood abruptly, pacing across the office. The sedatives. All those years of sedatives. They weren't helping Ethan, they were suppressing him, keeping him quiet, keeping him manageable, keeping him profitable. Sarah spun to face him. "We have to stop him. Right now. Today. How many other children is he doing this to? That's exactly what I intend to find out." James's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. "My lawyer is here." 2 hours later, David Chen sat at the conference table with 6 inches of documents spread before him. "James, this is worse than I thought." David removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I made some calls last night. Harper has been operating this way for at least 15 years. Dozens of families, maybe hundreds. How is he still practicing? Money, connections, fear." David spread his hands. The families who figured it out were usually desperate for settlement money. They signed NDAs and walked away. The ones who tried to fight were buried in legal fees until they gave up. Sarah leaned forward. "But we're not going to give up." David looked at her, then at James. "Who is this Sarah Mitchell? She's the one who discovered what Harper was doing to my son. She's a maid. She's the reason my son laughed for the first time in 6 years." James's voice left no room for argument. "She stays in this conversation." David nodded slowly. "All right, here's the situation. We have enough evidence to file a complaint with the California Medical Board, but that process takes years, and Harper's lawyers will drag it out until everyone loses interest. Then what do? We go public, find other families willing to talk, build a case so overwhelming that the medical board has no choice but to act immediately." David paused. "But James, this means exposing Ethan's story to the world. Your son, your family, everything becomes public." James didn't hesitate. "I don't care about my privacy. I care about making sure Harper never hurts another child." "What about the other families?" Sarah asked. "How do we find them?" David pulled out a folder. I already have 3 names, families who filed complaints that were dismissed or settled. One of them, Maria Gonzalez, has been trying to get someone to listen for 5 years. Her daughter was in Harper's care from age 4 to age 9. Call her, James said. Call all of them. Set up meetings for this week. James, you need to understand something. David's voice was grave. The moment we start reaching out to other families, Harper will know. He has connections everywhere, sources in medical boards, law firms, even newsrooms. He'll come after you. Let him come. I'm serious. This man has destroyed careers, bankrupted families, even... David stopped. Even what? David was silent for a long moment. There are rumors, unverified, about a father who was building a case against Harper 8 years ago. He died in a car accident before he could file. Sarah's breath caught. Are you saying Harper had him killed? I'm saying be careful, both of you. James stood and walked to the window. He thought about Ethan sleeping peacefully down the hall. He thought about Emily, who had trusted him to protect their son. He thought about 6 years of silence that could have been prevented. I've spent my entire career taking risks, James said quietly. Building companies that everyone said would fail, fighting battles that everyone said couldn't be won. He turned to face David. This isn't a business decision. This is about my son, and I will burn Vincent Harper to the ground if it's the last thing I do. David nodded. Then let's get to work. 3 days later, Sarah sat in the living room with Maria Gonzalez, while her daughter Isabella played quietly nearby. Maria was 43 years old, with tired eyes and work-worn hands. She had driven 6 hours from San Diego to meet them. 5 years, Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. For 5 years I've been trying to get someone to believe me. The lawyers all said the same thing. Harper is too powerful. The case is too complicated. We don't have enough evidence. We believe you, Sarah said, and we have evidence now. Maria's eyes filled with tears. When Isabella first went to Dr. Harper, she could say a few words. Not many, but some. After 3 years of his treatment, she stopped speaking entirely. He told us it was her condition progressing. He told us to accept that she would never improve. What happened when you took her to another doctor? She started speaking again within 6 months. Maria's voice broke. 6 months. After 5 years of being told it was impossible, that man stole my daughter's childhood. He stole her voice. James entered the room. Mrs. Gonzalez, I want you to know that I'm prepared to fund this entire case, whatever it costs, whatever it takes. But I need your help. What do you need me to do? Tell your story. Publicly. On camera. We're working with a journalist who's been investigating Harper for 2 years. She needs families willing to speak on the record. Maria looked at her daughter. Isabella was 9 years old now, small for her age, with dark hair and cautious eyes. She was stacking blocks carefully, methodically, whispering numbers to herself as she worked. She's counting, Sarah said softly. She's really good at it. Maria smiled through her tears. She loves numbers, always has. Harper said her brain couldn't process patterns. He was wrong about everything. Will you help us? James asked. Maria took a deep breath. Dr. Harper destroyed 5 years of my daughter's life. He made me believe I was a bad mother for hoping she could improve. He took my money, my trust, my hope. Her jaw hardened. Yes, I'll help you. I'll tell everyone what he did. James nodded. Thank you. But Mr. Crawford, Maria's voice dropped. Be careful. Harper knows people. After I filed my complaint, I lost my job. My car was vandalized. Someone broke into my house and took nothing except my daughter's medical files. Sarah and James exchanged a look. He's already watching, Sarah said. He's always watching. That night, around 11 p.m., Sarah was in the kitchen when she heard a sound from Ethan's wing. She moved quickly down the hallway, heart pounding. The door to Ethan's room was open. She stepped inside. Ethan was awake. Sitting up in his bed, actually sitting up, something she had never seen him do without assistance. His eyes were fixed on the window where rain had begun to fall. He was humming again, that same low melodic sound she had heard weeks ago. But this time, there was something else. His lips were moving, forming shapes, almost like wah, wah. Sarah's knees went weak. She grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. Ethan, honey, can you say that again? He turned to look at her. Actually looked at her, his eyes focusing on her face with an intensity she had never seen before. Water. Water, his first real word. Sarah ran. She flew down the hallway to James's study, not caring about the noise, not caring about anything except what she had just witnessed. James! She burst through the door. James, wake up! He jerked upright from where he had fallen asleep on his desk. What's wrong? Ethan spoke. He said a word, a real word. James stared at her. What? He said water, clear as day. He looked right at me and said water. James was on his feet before she finished speaking. They ran together through the house, their footsteps echoing in the silent halls. When they reached Ethan's room, the boy was still sitting up, still watching the rain. His fingers moved against the blanket, tracing patterns only he could see. James approached slowly, terrified of breaking the spell. Ethan, buddy! Can you hear me? Ethan's head turned toward his father's voice. Daddy! James collapsed. He fell to his knees beside the bed, sobs tearing through his body. Ethan had said daddy once before in the pool, but this was different. This was in the middle of the night, unprompted, deliberate. His son was waking up. That's right, James choked out. That's right, I'm daddy. I'm right here. Ethan reached out with one small hand and touched his father's face. James caught the hand and held it against his cheek, crying so hard he could barely breathe. Sarah stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her own face, watching a father and son connect for the first time in 6 years. Water, Ethan said again. He pointed toward the window. Water. Yes, baby, yes, it's raining. Water. Ethan smiled, that beautiful, fragile smile that had first appeared at the pool, but stronger now, more present. More, he said. James looked at Sarah desperately. More what? Sarah understood. She walked to the window and opened it, letting the sound of rain fill the room. Cool air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet earth. Ethan's face transformed with joy. He lifted both arms toward the sound, his fingers moving, reaching, feeling the mist that drifted through the opening. More, he said again, laughing. More water. 3 words. In one night, after 6 years of silence, 3 words. Sarah closed the window before he got too cold, but Ethan didn't protest. He seemed tired now, his burst of energy fading. James helped him lie back down, tucking the blankets around him with trembling hands. Sleep now, buddy. We'll go to the pool tomorrow. All the water you want. Ethan's eyes were already closing, but just before he drifted off, he whispered one more word. Sarah. Her name. He had said her name. Sarah pressed her hand against her mouth to muffle the sob that escaped. She had spent 4 months wondering if her life had any purpose after losing Grace. Now she knew. This was why she was still alive. James joined her in the hallway, closing Ethan's door quietly behind them. He said your name. James said, his voice raw. He knows who you are. He knows who we all are. He always has. He just couldn't tell us. James took her hands in his. Sarah, I don't know how to thank you. I don't have words for what you've done. You don't need to thank me. Just help me stop the man who did this to him. James's expression hardened. Tomorrow, I'm calling the journalist. It's time to go public. The next morning, James made the call. Rachel Foster was 41 years old, a veteran investigative reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. She had been tracking complaints against Dr. Vincent Harper for over 2 years, hitting dead end after dead end. Mr. Crawford, I have to be honest with you, Rachel said over the phone. I've approached 7 families about going on the record. All of them backed out. Harper's legal team is ruthless. They threatened lawsuits, custody challenges, even criminal complaints for defamation. They won't threaten me. With all due respect, sir, you don't know what they're capable of. And they don't know what I'm capable of. James's voice was steel. I have more money than Harper and his lawyers combined. I have documented evidence of medical malpractice, and I have 2 families already willing to speak. How many more do you need?" Rachel was silent for a moment. "If we could get 5 families on camera telling similar stories with medical documentation to back it up, that would be enough to break the story wide open." "Then find me 5 families. I'll cover all expenses. Travel, legal protection, whatever they need." "Mr. Crawford, this isn't just about money. These families are scared, really scared. Harper has made examples of people who tried to fight him." "Then let's give them someone to rally behind. Set up a meeting. Bring everyone you've contacted. Let me talk to them personally." "You'd do that." "My son spent 6 years in chemical prison because of Vincent Harper. I'd walk through fire to bring that man down." 1 week later, James stood before a room of 11 parents. They had gathered in a conference room at a hotel in San Jose, neutral territory, away from prying eyes. Some had driven from San Diego, others from Los Angeles. One family had flown from Phoenix. All of them had children who had been patients of Dr. Vincent Harper. All of them had stories of hope, turned to despair, of progress, reversed, of trust betrayed. James looked at their faces and saw his own pain reflected back 11 times over. "Thank you for coming," he began. "I know you're scared. I know what Harper has done to silence people who spoke out before. But I want you to understand something. I'm not going anywhere. I have the resources to fight this man for as long as it takes, and I'm asking you to fight with me." A father in the back row raised his hand. "How do we know you won't abandon us when things get hard? Rich people make promises all the time. Then they disappear." James nodded. "Fair question. Here's my answer." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Margaret, transfer the funds." His phone buzzed with a confirmation. "I just moved $10 million into an escrow account," James said. "That money is dedicated solely to legal fees, security, and support for any family that participates in this case. It's not my money anymore, it's yours. I can't take it back even if I wanted to." The room went silent. Maria Gonzalez stood up. "I've already agreed to speak on camera. Dr. Harper took 5 years from my daughter. I'm not letting him take anything else." Another mother rose, then a father, then 2 more. By the end of the hour, 9 of the 11 families had committed to going on the record. Rachel Foster could barely contain her excitement. "This is it," she said to James afterward. "This is enough to blow this story wide open. We're going to take him down." "When can you publish?" "I need 3 weeks to verify everything, interview all the families, get legal clearance. But once this hits, Harper is finished." James shook her hand. 3 weeks. Make them count." But Vincent Harper was not the kind of man who waited to be destroyed. 2 days after the meeting in San Jose, Sarah received a phone call from an unknown number. "Miss Mitchell." The voice was male, smooth, professional. "This is Dr. Vincent Harper. I believe we need to have a conversation." Sarah's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "I have resources you can't imagine. I also have information about your daughter. Grace wasn't it. Such a tragedy, 11 days old, SIDS, the official report said." He paused. "But we both know official reports don't always tell the whole story." Sarah couldn't breathe. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about medical records, autopsy findings, details that were overlooked at the time but might be very interesting to the right people." His voice turned sharp. "Walk away from the Crawfords, Miss Mitchell. Go back to your quiet little life. Forget what you think you saw with the boy." "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a choice. Walk away now, and your daughter's memory stays undisturbed. Continue down this path, and I promise you, you will regret it in ways you cannot imagine." The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her whole body was shaking. He had found her. He knew about Grace. He was threatening to use her dead daughter against her. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break something. She wanted to crawl into a dark corner and disappear. Instead, she walked to James's office and told him everything. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, his face was white with rage. "He called you directly. He threatened you with your daughter's death." James's voice was barely controlled. "This man is a monster." "He's desperate," Sarah said. "He knows we're coming for him. This is his way of trying to scatter us before we can strike." "Did it work?" Are you scared? Sarah met his eyes. I'm terrified, but I'm not walking away. James reached out and took her hand. Neither am I. We end this together. That night, James hired private security for the estate. 2 guards at the gate, 2 more patrolling the grounds. He installed new cameras and upgraded the alarm system. Then he called David Chen. Harper contacted Sarah directly, made threats. I want a restraining order. James' restraining orders take time, and Harper will fight it. I don't care. File the paperwork. And David, James's voice dropped. I want you to find out everything about Harper's personal life. Where he lives, where he goes, who he talks to. Everything. Why? Because if he's watching us, we're going to watch him right back. 5 days before Rachel Foster's story was scheduled to publish, everything changed. James was in his office reviewing legal documents when his phone rang. It was Rachel. James, we have a problem. His stomach dropped. What kind of problem? My editor just got a call from Harper's lawyers. They're threatening to sue the Chronicle for defamation if we publish. They're claiming all our sources are unreliable and that our medical documentation was obtained illegally. That's absurd. Everything was provided voluntarily by the families. I know, but the legal threat is real. My editor is getting cold feet. He wants to delay publication. For how long? Indefinitely. James gripped the phone so hard his knuckles went white. No, we are not delaying. Rachel, those families trusted us. They put themselves on the line. I know, James. I'm fighting for this story. But I need something else, something so big that my editor can't ignore it. Like what? Rachel hesitated. A witness from inside Harper's practice. Someone who worked with him, saw what he did, and is willing to testify. Do you have anyone? There's a nurse, Linda Patterson. She worked for Harper for 7 years before quitting 2 years ago. I've tried to contact her, but she won't return my calls. She's scared. James made a decision. Give me her address. I'll talk to her myself. 24 hours later, James knocked on a small apartment door in Oakland. A woman in her 50s answered. Her face was lined with exhaustion and fear. The moment she saw James, she tried to close the door. He put his hand against it. Mrs. Patterson, please. I just need 5 minutes. I know who you are. I saw the news. I can't help you. You worked for Harper for 7 years. You saw what he did to children, to my son. Linda's face crumpled. I can't. He'll destroy me. He'll destroy my family. He's already destroyed dozens of families, including mine. James softened his voice. Please, I'm not asking you to be brave for me. I'm asking you to be brave for all the children who can't speak for themselves. Linda stood frozen in the doorway, tears running down her cheeks. I gave injections, she whispered. I gave sedatives to children who didn't need them. I watched them go quiet, go still, and I told myself the doctor knew best. Her voice broke. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew something was wrong. Then help me stop him. Help me make sure he never does this again. Linda was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. Come inside, Mr. Crawford. I'll tell you everything. Linda Patterson sat across from James at her small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her eyes were distant, haunted by memories she had spent 2 years trying to forget. I started working for Dr. Harper 12 years ago. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. Fresh out of nursing school, I thought I was so lucky, working for one of the most respected pediatric neurologists in California. My parents were so proud. James remained silent, letting her speak at her own pace. The first few years seemed normal. Difficult cases, yes, children with severe disabilities. But Dr. Harper was brilliant, confident. Parents trusted him completely. Linda's jaw tightened. I trusted him completely. When did that change? Linda closed her eyes. There was a boy named Marcus, 7 years old. Autistic nonverbal, but responsive to certain stimuli. His parents brought him to Dr. Harper, hoping for help with communication therapy. What happened to him? After 6 months of treatment, Marcus stopped responding to anything. His mother came to me crying, asking what was wrong. She said her son used to hum songs, used to reach for her hand, used to look at her face when she spoke. Linda's voice cracked. She said it was like watching him disappear. James felt his stomach turn. This was Ethan's story, repeated over and over with different children. I brought my concerns to Dr. Harper, asked if we should adjust Marcus's medication, try different approaches. Linda laughed bitterly. He looked at me like I was an insect. He said, "Linda, the parents don't pay us to cure their children. They pay us to give them hope, and hope is a very expensive commodity." He said that those exact words, I'll never forget them. Linda wiped her eyes. That's when I started paying attention, really paying attention, and what I saw made me sick. She stood and walked to a closet, pulling out a cardboard box. I kept copies of everything: patient files, medication logs, internal memos. I didn't know what to do with them, but I knew someday someone would need them. James stared at the box. How many children? In my 7 years there, at least 40, maybe more, children who showed potential, who could have improved with proper treatment. Dr. Harper systematically suppressed every single one of them. Why didn't you go to the authorities? Linda's face twisted with shame. Because I was part of it. I administered those injections. I told parents their children were doing as well as could be expected. I smiled and nodded and collected my paycheck. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I was a coward, Mr. Crawford. I knew what was happening and I did nothing. James leaned forward. You can do something now. Testify. Go on the record. Help us stop him. He'll come after me. He'll destroy my nursing license, file criminal charges, make my life a living hell. I'll protect you, whatever it takes. Linda studied his face for a long moment. Your son, Ethan. I remember him. He came to Dr. Harper 3 years ago. James's breath caught. You remember. Beautiful little boy. He responded to water. I noted it in his file. Running water made him alert, engaged. Her voice dropped. I showed Dr. Harper. I thought he would be excited. Instead, he told me to delete the observation and increase Ethan's sedatives. You knew my son could respond to water and you erased it. I did what I was told. Linda's voice broke completely. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. If I had been braver, if I had spoken up, your son might have had 3 more years of development, 3 years of connection, 3 years of life. James wanted to be angry. Part of him was furious beyond words. But looking at this broken woman, he saw someone who had been as much a victim of Harper's manipulation as anyone else. The past can't be changed, James said quietly, but the future can. Will you help me? Linda nodded slowly. Yes. Yes, I'll help you. Whatever you need. James called Rachel Foster that same night. I have your witness. Former nurse, 7 years inside Harper's practice. She has documentation, files, medication logs, everything. Rachel's voice was electric with excitement. James, this changes everything. With an inside witness, my editor can't ignore this story. When can I interview her? Tomorrow morning. I'm bringing her to San Francisco myself. I'll have the camera crew ready. James, this is it. This is what we needed. The next morning at 8 a.m., James drove Linda Patterson to the Chronicle's offices in San Francisco. Rachel met them in the lobby, her face a mixture of determination and barely contained energy. Mrs. Patterson, thank you for doing this. I know how difficult this must be. Linda clutched her box of files against her chest. Just promise me this will actually make a difference. Promise me he'll be stopped. I promise. The interview lasted 4 hours. Linda described everything: the systematic over-medication, the suppression of progress, the manipulation of parents, the financial incentives that rewarded keeping patients dependent. She named names, dates, specific cases. When she finished, Rachel sat back in her chair, visibly shaken. This is worse than I imagined. This isn't just malpractice. This is systematic abuse. What happens now? James asked. Now we publish. My editor has already cleared it. The story goes live in 72 hours. James felt something loosen in his chest. After weeks of fighting, after years of not knowing the truth, they were finally going to expose Vincent Harper to the world. But Harper wasn't finished yet. 48 hours before the story was scheduled to publish, James received a call from his security team. Mr. Crawford, we have a situation. Someone attempted to breach the estate perimeter 20 minutes ago. We apprehended him before he reached the main house. James's blood ran cold. Who is he? He won't identify himself, but we found a syringe in his pocket. Contents unknown. James was at the security office within 10 minutes. The intruder sat handcuffed to a chair, a young man in his 20s with dead eyes and a blank expression. Who sent you? The man said nothing. What's in the syringe? Silence. James grabbed the man's collar and pulled him close. My son sleeps in this house. My son, if you don't start talking right now, I will make you regret ever being born. The man's expression flickered with something that might have been fear. I was just supposed to scare you. Deliver a message. What message? Stop the story. Or next time we won't miss. James released him and stepped back, his heart pounding with rage. Harper had sent someone to his home, to threaten his family, to threaten Ethan. Call the police, James told his security chief. And then call David Chen. I want this man prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And the syringe, send it to a lab. I want to know exactly what that bastard planned to inject into my son. The lab results came back the next morning at 11 a.m. The syringe contained a concentrated sedative, the same type Dr. Harper had been prescribing to Ethan for years, enough to cause permanent neurological damage if administered in a single dose. James stared at the report, his hands shaking. Harper hadn't sent someone to scare him. He had sent someone to silence Ethan permanently, to destroy whatever progress the boy had made, to eliminate the living evidence of his crimes. He tried to kill my son, James said to Sarah, his voice hollow. He actually tried to kill my son. Sarah's face was white with shock. What do? We publish the story, today, right now, before he can try again. James called Rachel Foster. Move up the timeline. I need the story live within the hour. James, we still have final edits legal review. Harper just sent someone to my house with a syringe full of sedatives. He tried to hurt my son. We cannot wait another day. Rachel was silent for a moment. I'll make it happen. 1 hour. At 2:47 p.m. Pacific Time, the San Francisco Chronicle published its exposé. The headline read, Renowned neurologist accused of systematic child abuse, families speak out after years of silence. Within 30 minutes, the story had been picked up by every major news outlet in the country. Within 2 hours, it was trending on social media. Within 4 hours, the California Medical Board announced an emergency investigation. By nightfall, 23 additional families had contacted Rachel Foster with their own stories. James watched the news coverage from his living room. Sarah sitting beside him, Ethan sleeping peacefully in his room down the hall. It's happening, Sarah whispered. It's really happening. It's not over yet. Harper still has resources connections. He'll fight back. But we exposed him. The whole world knows now. James turned to look at her. The whole world knowing doesn't mean anything until he's in prison, until he can never hurt another child again. The next 72 hours were chaos. Dr. Vincent Harper held a press conference denying all allegations. He called the story a coordinated attack by disgruntled families and threatened to sue the Chronicle for defamation. But his denials rang hollow against the mounting evidence. Linda Patterson's testimony was devastating. Her documentation was irrefutable. One by one, other former employees came forward confirming her account. The California Medical Board suspended Harper's license pending investigation. The district attorney's office opened a criminal inquiry. Parents who had been silent for years finally found their voices. On the 4th day after publication, James received a phone call he never expected. Mr. Crawford, this is Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI. We need to talk about Dr. Vincent Harper. James met Agent Torres at a federal building in San Jose that afternoon at 3 p.m. She was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and direct. Mr. Crawford, the Bureau has been investigating Dr. Harper for 18 months. We suspected insurance fraud and medical malpractice, but we didn't have enough evidence to move forward. And now we have everything we need. But we've also uncovered something much bigger. Torres slid a folder across the table. Harper isn't operating alone. He's part of a network of physicians who share patients' prescriptions and profits. They refer children to each other, keeping them in a cycle of unnecessary treatment for years. James opened the folder. Inside were names, photographs, financial records, at least a dozen doctors across 3 states. "This is organized crime," James said slowly. "That's exactly what it is, and we want your help taking all of them down." "What do you need from me?" "Testimony, documentation, access to the other families you've been working with." Torres leaned forward. "Mr. Crawford, you've already done the hardest part. You broke the silence. Now let us finish what you started." James didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need." 2 weeks later, the FBI executed simultaneous raids on 12 medical practices across California, Arizona, and Nevada. Dr. Vincent Harper was arrested at his home in Los Altos at 6:15 a.m., still in his pajamas, while news cameras captured every moment. James watched the footage with Sarah and Ethan. Ethan, now speaking in short sentences, pointed at the television. "Bad man," he said clearly. "Bad man going away." James pulled his son close. "That's right, buddy. The bad man is going away. He's never going to hurt anyone again." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "He understands. He knows what happened to him." "He's always understood," James said quietly. "We just couldn't hear him." The trial of Dr. Vincent Harper began 4 months later. James testified on the second day. He sat in the witness box facing the man who had stolen 6 years of his son's life. Harper looked smaller now, diminished by months in custody, stripped of his expensive suits and professional arrogance. "Mr. Crawford," the prosecutor began, "can you describe the treatment your son received under Dr. Harper's care?" James took a deep breath. "For 3 years, Dr. Harper told me my son was incapable of improvement. He prescribed sedatives that I now know were designed to suppress Ethan's natural responses. He ignored documented evidence that my son responded to water stimulation. He deliberately kept my son silent so he could continue collecting $50,000 a month from my family. And what happened when you removed your son from Dr. Harper's care?" Within weeks, my son spoke his first word. Within months, he was forming sentences. He can identify colors, count to 20, and express his emotions. James's voice broke. My son was never broken. He was being held prisoner. The courtroom was silent. Harper's defense attorney stood. "Mr. Crawford, isn't it true that you have no medical training, that you're simply a businessman with no expertise in pediatric neurology?" "That's true." "Then how can you claim to know better than a doctor with 30 years of experience?" James looked directly at Harper. "Because a maid with no medical training discovered in 2 weeks what your client hid for 3 years. Because my son is living proof that everything Dr. Harper told me was a lie." The defense attorney had no follow-up questions. The trial lasted 6 weeks. One by one, families took the stand. Parents who had trusted Harper. Children who had lost years of development. Former employees who had witnessed the abuse firsthand. Linda Patterson testified for 8 hours over 2 days. Her documentation filled 17 binders. Maria Gonzalez held up a photograph of her daughter Isabella at age 4 before Harper's treatment, pointing to a drawing she had made. Then she held up a photograph from 3 years later, showing a child staring blankly at nothing. "This is what he took from us," Maria said, her voice shaking with rage. "Our daughter's childhood, her voice, her future, and he did it for money." On the final day of testimony, the prosecution called one last witness, Sarah Mitchell. She walked to the stand wearing a simple blue dress. Her hands were steady, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Miss Mitchell, you are employed as a household assistant for the Crawford family, is that correct?" "Yes." "Can you describe how you first noticed that Ethan Crawford was capable of responding to stimuli?" Sarah took a deep breath. In my first week at the house, I noticed that Ethan's fingers moved when water was running nearby. It was subtle but consistent, so I started documenting every instance. Why did you do that? You have no medical training. Because I lost my daughter 4 months before I started working for the Crawfords. She died at 11 days old. Sarah's voice cracked. In those 11 days, I learned to read her silences, to understand what she was communicating even without words. When I met Ethan, I recognized the same thing. He wasn't empty. He was waiting for someone to notice. And Dr. Harper never noticed in 3 years of treatment. Dr. Harper documented Ethan's response to water in his own files. Then he ordered it erased and increased Ethan's sedatives. Sarah's eyes blazed with anger. He didn't miss it. He buried it. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Sarah continued, her voice rising above the noise. Dr. Harper didn't fail Ethan Crawford. He didn't make a medical mistake. He deliberately silenced a child who was trying to communicate. He stole 6 years of a father's relationship with his son. He broke families apart for profit. She pointed at Harper. That man is not a doctor. He's a monster. The judge banged his gavel. Order, order in the court. But Sarah had said what needed to be said. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. On a Tuesday afternoon at 4:32 p.m., the verdict was announced. Guilty on all counts: medical fraud, child abuse, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Dr. Vincent Harper was sentenced to 47 years in federal prison. He would die behind bars. James was sitting in the courtroom when the verdict was read. He didn't cheer. He didn't celebrate. He simply closed his eyes and let the tears fall. It was over. After 6 years of silence, after months of fighting, after nearly losing hope entirely, it was finally over. Sarah found him in the hallway afterward, leaning against the wall, his face buried in his hands. She didn't say anything. She just stood beside him, her shoulder touching his, offering silent support. Finally, James looked up. I need to see my son. They drove home together. Ethan was in the pool area with his physical therapist when they arrived. The moment he saw his father, his face lit up. Daddy! He splashed excitedly, his arms moving through the water with strength that had been unimaginable just months ago. Daddy home! James kicked off his shoes, walked into the pool, fully clothed, and lifted his son into his arms. Yeah, buddy, he said, holding Ethan tight. Daddy's home, and the bad man is gone forever. Ethan wrapped his small arms around his father's neck. Love you, Daddy. 3 words, simple words, words that 6 months ago had seemed impossible. James held his son and cried with joy for the first time in years. Sarah stood at the pool's edge watching them. Her heart was full in a way she hadn't felt since holding Grace. She had come to this house looking for purpose, for a reason to keep living after losing everything. She had found so much more. That night, after Ethan was asleep, James found Sarah sitting by the pool alone. He sat down beside her without speaking. The water reflected the stars above, rippling gently in the warm evening breeze. What happens now? Sarah asked quietly. Now we help Ethan recover. Now we help the other families rebuild. Now we make sure this never happens to another child. And me? Do you still need a maid? James turned to look at her. Sarah, you were never just a maid. You saved my son. You gave me back my family. You gave me back hope. I was just paying attention. No. James took her hand. You were brave. Braver than all those doctors, all those experts, all the people with degrees and credentials. You saw what no one else saw because you cared enough to look. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I think about Grace every day. I think about what she might have become if she had lived. Tell me about her. Sarah smiled through her tears. She had these tiny fingers, perfect little fingers that would wrap around mine, and she would look at me like she knew exactly who I was, like she was trying to tell me something. What do you think she was trying to say? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I think she was saying goodbye. I think she knew she wasn't going to stay long, and she wanted me to know that she loved me. James squeezed her hand. She would be proud of you. What you did for Ethan, what you did for all those families, she would be so proud." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "Thank you, James." They sat together in the darkness, two broken people who had somehow found a way to heal each other. In his room down the hall, Ethan slept peacefully, dreaming of water and sunlight and the sound of his father's voice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Recovery was a long road, and Ethan still had far to go. But for the first time in years, the future held promise instead of despair. The silence had finally been broken. 6 months had passed since the trial ended. The world had moved on to other stories, other scandals, other tragedies. But inside the Crawford mansion, a quiet revolution was taking place. Ethan was learning to live. Every morning at 7 a.m., Sarah helped him through his new routine. Physical therapy had strengthened his upper body enough that he could now wheel himself short distances. Speech therapy had expanded his vocabulary to over 200 words. Occupational therapy had taught him to hold a crayon to feed himself, to button his own shirt with patient, determined fingers. But the biggest changes weren't measured in therapy reports. On a Tuesday morning in April, Sarah was preparing breakfast when she heard a sound from Ethan's room. She set down the spatula and listened. Singing. Ethan was singing. She walked quietly down the hallway and stood outside his door. His voice was soft and imperfect, the melody wandering and uncertain. But he was singing a song she had hummed to him hundreds of times during their sessions by the pool. Sarah pressed her hand against her heart and felt it breaking and healing at the same time. "That's beautiful, buddy," she said softly from the doorway. Ethan looked up and smiled. "Sarah's song. I learned it. You learned my song. For you." He wheeled himself toward her, his movements still awkward, but growing stronger every day. Present. For Sarah. She knelt down and hugged him, hiding her tears against his small shoulder. "That's the best present anyone has ever given me." "Don't cry. Crying is sad. Sometimes crying is happy, Ethan. Sometimes we cry because our hearts are too full." He thought about this for a moment. "My heart is full too, full of Sarah and Daddy and pool and songs." Sarah laughed through her tears. "That's a very full heart." "Good full, happy full." James appeared in the hallway, drawn by the sound of voices. "What's going on?" "Ethan learned to sing," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "He learned my song." James's face transformed with wonder. "Can you sing it for me, buddy?" Ethan nodded seriously. Then he began again, his small voice filling the hallway with the simple melody that had somehow traveled from Sarah's grief into his awakening soul. When he finished, James was crying too. "That was perfect," James said hoarsely. "Absolutely perfect. Daddy crying happy. Yeah, buddy. Daddy's crying happy." 2 weeks later, James made an announcement at breakfast. "I've been thinking about the future," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "The company has been running itself for almost a year now. The board keeps asking when I'm coming back." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "Are you going back?" "No." James shook his head firmly. "I'm selling the company." "Selling it, James, you built that company from nothing. It's worth billions. And those billions mean nothing compared to what I have here." James looked at Ethan, who was carefully spreading jam on his toast with intense concentration. "I missed 6 years of my son's life because I trusted the wrong people and worked too many hours. I'm not missing another day." Sarah didn't know what to say. "What will you do instead?" "I've already started." James pulled out his phone and showed her a website. "The Crawford Foundation for Special Needs Children. We launched quietly last month. We're funding research supporting families and training healthcare workers to recognize the signs of medical abuse." Sarah scrolled through the site, her eyes widening. "James, this is incredible. I want to hire you." "What?" "As our Director of Family Advocacy, you would work directly with families, helping them navigate the system, connecting them with resources, teaching them how to advocate for their children." James leaned forward. "Sarah, what you did for Ethan, you can do for thousands of other kids. You have a gift. I want to help you share it." Sarah stared at him. "I don't have any qualifications. No degree, no certification. You have something better. You have experience. You have instinct. You have a heart that knows how to see what others miss. James reached across the table and took her hand. Say yes. Before Sarah could answer, Ethan looked up from his toast. Sarah, stay, he said firmly. Sarah, family. Family stays. Sarah's eyes filled with tears for the 100th time. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll do it. The foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Within 3 months, they had received over 5,000 inquiries from families across the country. Parents desperate for help. Parents who had been told their children would never improve. Parents who recognized their own stories in the news coverage of Harper's trial. Sarah worked 18-hour days, answering calls, reviewing cases, connecting families with specialists who actually cared about helping children rather than profiting from them. One evening in July, around 9 p.m., she was still at her desk when James knocked on her office door. You need to stop. I can't. There are so many families waiting. And they'll still be waiting tomorrow. You can't help anyone if you burn yourself out. Sarah rubbed her eyes. I talked to a mother today from Oklahoma. Her son is 12. He's been on sedatives since he was 4. 8 years, James. 8 years of his life stolen. What did you tell her? I told her to stop the medication immediately, but she's scared. The doctors keep telling her it's dangerous to change anything. Sarah's voice cracked. They're using fear to keep these children trapped. James sat down across from her. You're making a difference, Sarah. Every family you help, every child you save, it matters. It doesn't feel like enough. It will never feel like enough. That's how you know you care. James paused. But you also need to take care of yourself. Ethan asked about you today. He wanted to know why you missed dinner. Sarah's heart clenched. I missed dinner. 3rd time this week. She closed her laptop immediately. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to him. Sarah found Ethan in his room, already in his pajamas, a book open on his lap. Hey, buddy, I heard I missed dinner. Ethan looked up. His face showed no anger, only concern. Sarah working too hard, like Daddy used to. The words hit her like a physical blow. She sat down on the edge of his bed. You're right. I have been working too hard. Why? Because I want to help all the kids like you, kids who need someone to notice them. Ethan considered this seriously. Can't help everyone. I know, but I want to try. Trying is good, but Sarah needs rest too. Sarah is important. Sarah felt tears threatening again. This boy who had spent 6 years unable to communicate was now teaching her about balance and self-care. When did you get so wise? She asked softly. Always wise. Just couldn't say it before. Sarah laughed and pulled him into a hug. I love you, Ethan. You know that. He hugged her back. Know it. Love Sarah too. Sarah is family. Family. That word had meant something different to her a year ago. It had meant loss and grief and empty arms. Now it meant this boy, this house, this strange, beautiful life she had stumbled into. Tell you what, Sarah said. Tomorrow, no work. Just you and me and the pool. All day. Deal. Ethan's face lit up. Deal. The next day, Sarah kept her promise. She and Ethan spent the entire afternoon by the pool. They played with floating toys. They practiced new words. They lay on towels in the sun, while Ethan pointed at clouds and named their shapes. That one is dog, he said, his finger tracing the outline. And that one is fish number bird. Flying bird. What about that one? Ethan squinted at the sky. That one is Mommy. Sarah's breath caught. Mommy. Daddy showed me pictures. Mommy had clouds in her hair, like that. Sarah looked at the cloud. It did look like flowing hair, soft and wispy against the blue sky. Do you think about your mommy a lot? She asked carefully. Sometimes. Daddy says Mommy loved me very much. Daddy says Mommy would be happy that I'm talking now. I think she would be very happy. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Sarah's like a mommy. Sarah's heart stopped. What? Sarah takes care of me. Sarah loves me. Sarah stays. He turned to look at her with those clear, innocent eyes. "Sarah is my other mommy." Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except pull this beautiful boy into her arms and hold him while tears streamed down her face. "Is that okay?" Ethan asked, his voice small and uncertain. "Is it okay that I called you Mommy?" "It's more than okay," Sarah whispered. "It's the best thing anyone has ever said to me." That evening, James found Sarah sitting alone on the patio watching the sunset. "Ethan told me what he said." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. "How do you feel about it? Terrified? Grateful? Overwhelmed?" She laughed shakily. "I never expected this. Any of this. I came here looking for a job, James. Something to keep me busy until I figured out how to live without my daughter. And now I have a son. A different son, but a son. And it feels like Grace somehow led me here, like she knew I needed Ethan as much as he needed me." James sat down beside her. "I've been thinking about something for a while, something I've been afraid to bring up." Sarah looked at him. "What is it?" "Adoption." The word hung in the air between them. "I want you to adopt Ethan. Legally. Officially." James's voice was steady, but his hands were trembling. "I want you to be his mother in every sense of the word." Sarah stared at him in shock. "James, you don't have to. I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because it's right." He turned to face her fully. "You saved my son. You brought him back to life. You love him like he's your own. Hell, you love him better than most biological parents love their children. But what about you? What does this mean for us?" James was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want it to mean?" Sarah felt her heart racing. "I don't know. This past year has been... Everything is different now. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about what I wanted, about who I am, it's all changed." "I know." James took her hand. "I'm not asking for anything except what you want to give, but I need you to know something." "What?" "I'm falling in love with you." Sarah closed her eyes. She had felt it too, the way her heart lifted when he walked into a room, the way his voice calmed her when she was overwhelmed, the way they had become partners in everything, not just caring for Ethan, but building a life together. "This is complicated," she said softly. "Everything worth having is complicated." "What about Ethan? What if things don't work out between us? He's already been through so much." "Then we figure it out together. We've faced worse than complicated feelings, Sarah. We've faced doctors and lawyers and criminals and the entire medical establishment." James squeezed her hand. "I think we can handle falling in love." Sarah laughed despite herself. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. The simplest thing in the world." He lifted her hand and pressed it against his chest over his heart. "Do you feel that that's what happens every time I see you? Every time you smile? Every time I hear you singing to my son?" "James, you don't have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know. However this goes, whatever you decide, I needed you to know how I feel." Sarah looked at him in the fading light. This man who had lost so much, who had fought so hard, who had trusted her when no one else would. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I. I haven't loved anyone since my daughter died. I haven't let myself. I know. What if I can't do this? What if I'm too broken?" James cupped her face in his hands. "Sarah, you are the least broken person I've ever met. You took your grief and turned it into something beautiful. You took your pain and used it to heal others. That's not broken. That's extraordinary." Sarah felt something shift inside her. A wall she had built after Grace died, a wall she had thought would stand forever, began to crumble. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay, let's try. Let's figure out what this is. Together." James smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after a long, dark night. Together. He leaned in and kissed her softly. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks again, but this time they were tears of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The adoption papers were filed 3 weeks later. Sarah sat in the lawyer's office signing document after document, her hand trembling with each stroke of the pen. "This makes you Ethan Crawford's legal mother," the lawyer explained, "all rights and responsibilities." "I understand." James sat beside her, signing his own set of papers. "We're also filing for joint custody. Sarah and I will share legal guardianship equally." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual for an unmarried couple." "We're an unusual family," James replied. When the paperwork was complete, they drove home in comfortable silence. Ethan was waiting for them in the living room, bouncing with excitement. "Is it done? Is Sarah my mommy now?" James crouched down to his son's level. "It's done, buddy. Sarah is officially your mom." Ethan threw himself at Sarah with such force that she nearly fell over. "Mommy!" he shouted. "My mommy!" Sarah held him tight, laughing and crying at the same time. "That's right, baby. I'm your mommy now." "Can I call you mommy all the time?" "You can call me anything you want." "Mommy! Mommy! Mommy!" Ethan chanted, dancing in his wheelchair. "I have a mommy and a daddy and a pool and a family." James put his arm around Sarah, pulling both her and Ethan into a group embrace. "We're a family," he said quietly. "Finally." For a few perfect weeks, everything was peaceful. Ethan continued to progress. Sarah continued her work with the foundation. James handled the sale of his company, which closed for an unprecedented $14 billion. They donated half of it to charity and put the rest into trust funds and foundation endowments. Then, on a Thursday afternoon in September, everything changed again. Sarah was in her office when her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello, Miss Mitchell. This is Dr. Rebecca Wong at Stanford Children's Hospital. I'm calling about a patient who specifically requested to speak with you." Sarah frowned. "Who?" "Her name is Emma Reyes. She's 8 years old. She was a patient of Dr. Vincent Harper for 4 years. Sarah's blood ran cold. "What happened to her?" "She's dying, Miss Mitchell. Long-term effects of the medications Harper prescribed. Her organs are failing." Dr. Wong's voice cracked. "She saw your interview on television. She asked her mother to find you. She says she has something important to tell you." "I'll be there in an hour." Sarah drove to Stanford in a daze. Her mind raced with questions. Harper was in prison. The network had been dismantled. How many other children were still suffering from what he had done? Dr. Wong met her in the hospital lobby. "I should warn you," the doctor said quietly as they walked. "Emma's condition is severe. She may not have much time left. Days, perhaps weeks. But she's lucid, and she's been waiting for you." They entered a private room on the pediatric floor. Emma Reyes was small for 8 years old, her body thin and fragile under the hospital blankets. Tubes connected her to machines that beeped and hummed, but her eyes were bright and alert. Her mother sat beside the bed holding her daughter's hand. "Mrs. Reyes, I'm Sarah Mitchell." The mother stood and embraced Sarah immediately. "Thank you for coming. Thank you. Emma has been asking for you for days." Sarah approached the bed and knelt down to Emma's level. "Hi, Emma. I heard you wanted to talk to me." Emma smiled weakly. "You're the one who stopped Dr. Harper. I saw you on TV." "That's right. You saved the little boy, Ethan. You made him talk again." "He saved himself, really. I just helped him find his voice." Emma's expression grew serious. "I need to tell you something nobody knows." Sarah leaned closer. "What is it, sweetheart?" "There are more kids, hidden ones. Dr. Harper didn't keep all his patients at his main clinic." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's another place, a secret place. My friend Lily told me about it before she died." Sarah felt ice crawl down her spine. "What kind of place?" "A house, in the mountains, where he sends the kids nobody asks about. Kids without families, kids from foster care." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Lily was there for 2 years. She said there were at least 10 other children. She said it was bad, really bad." "Emma, do you know where this house is?" "Lily drew me a map before she got too sick." Emma looked at her mother. "Mommy, can you get it?" Mrs. Reyes opened a drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Emma kept this hidden for months. She was afraid to tell anyone. Sarah unfolded the paper. A child's drawing, crude but detailed. Mountains, trees, a winding road. And at the end, a building labeled The Bad Place. I tried to tell the police, Emma said, but they didn't believe me. They said I was confused from the medications. I believe you, Sarah said firmly. I believe every word. Emma reached out and grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising strength. Please find them. Please save the other kids. Promise me. Sarah looked into those bright, fierce eyes and saw something that broke her heart. A child who knew she was dying, spending her last days trying to help others. I promise, Sarah said. I will find them. Emma smiled and relaxed back against her pillow. Thank you. Now I can rest. Sarah stayed with Emma for another hour, holding her hand, talking softly about Ethan and the pool and all the beautiful things that existed in the world despite its darkness. When she finally left, she carried the map in her trembling hands. In the parking lot, she called James. We have a problem. A big one. What's wrong? Harper had a secret facility, children no one was looking for. Foster kids abandoned kids who fell through the cracks. Sarah's voice shook with rage. They're still there, James, still trapped, and nobody even knows they exist. James was silent for a moment. Come home. We need to figure out our next move. There's no time to figure anything out. Those children have been in that place for years. Every day we wait is another day they suffer. Sarah, we can't just storm in without a plan. We don't even know exactly where it is. I have a map. Drawn by a dying child. We need more information. Then help me get it. Help me find those kids before it's too late. James took a deep breath. Come home. Bring the map. I'll call Agent Torres at the FBI. Thank you. And Sarah, whatever we find, whatever we're walking into, we face it together. Understand? Together. Sarah agreed. She hung up and looked at the map one more time. Somewhere in those mountains, children were waiting to be saved, and Sarah Mitchell was going to find them. Agent Torres arrived at the Crawford mansion within 2 hours of Sarah's call. She studied Emma's map with narrowed eyes, comparing it to satellite images on her laptop. This matches a property in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's registered under a shell company that we traced to one of Harper's associates 6 months ago. Why didn't you raid it then? Sarah demanded. Because we had no evidence anyone was being held there. The property looked abandoned. We moved on to other leads. Torres's jaw tightened. If there are children there, we missed them. Then let's not miss them again, James said. What do you need? I need to verify Emma's information before I can get a warrant. One dying child's testimony isn't enough for a judge. Sarah slammed her hand on the table. Those children don't have time for bureaucracy. Every hour we waste is another hour they suffer. I understand your frustration, Miss Mitchell, but if we go in without proper authorization and find nothing, Harper's lawyers will use it to appeal his conviction. Everything we've built could collapse. James stepped forward. What if we could verify the information independently? Torres looked at him. How? Linda Patterson, Harper's former nurse. She might know something about this facility. We already interviewed her. She didn't mention any secondary location. She didn't mention it because nobody asked. James grabbed his phone. Linda knows things she hasn't told anyone, things she's too ashamed to volunteer. But if we ask the right questions, then ask them fast. James called Linda immediately. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy with sleep. Mr. Crawford, it's midnight. I know. I'm sorry, but this is urgent. James put the phone on speaker. Linda, I need you to think carefully. Did Harper ever mention a secondary facility, a private location where he treated certain patients? The line went silent. Linda, I can't talk about that. Sarah leaned toward the phone. Linda, there are children trapped in that place, right now as we speak. Children who have been there for years. I know. Linda's voice cracked. God help me, I know. James felt his blood turn to ice. You knew about this place. I went there once. Just once. Harper needed me to administer medications to patients who couldn't be transported. Linda was crying now. I saw them. 6 children in beds barely conscious. I asked Harper what was wrong with them, and he said they were special cases, wards of the state. No families to ask questions. Linda, why didn't you tell anyone? Because I was terrified. Because Harper told me that if I ever mentioned that place to anyone, he would make sure I never worked again. He said he had friends in the state foster system, friends who would believe him over me. Her sobs grew louder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. Agent Torres grabbed the phone. Mrs. Patterson, this is Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI. I need you to tell me everything you remember about that facility. The location, the layout, the number of children, everything. I only went once. It was dark. We drove for hours. Can you remember any landmarks? Any signs? Linda was quiet, struggling to recall. There was a gate, a metal gate with a broken lock, and a sign that said private property, no trespassing. The building was old, like an abandoned summer camp. Torres typed rapidly on her laptop. Summer camp, Santa Cruz Mountains, private property. She pulled up a list of properties. There are 6 abandoned camps in that area. Can you narrow it down? There was a creek. I remember hearing water. Harper made a joke about it. He said the children liked the sound of water, so he chose this place specifically. Sarah's heart stopped. He chose it because of the water? Yes, he said it kept them calm, made them easier to manage. The cruelty of it hit Sarah like a physical blow. Harper had used these children's natural responses against them. He had weaponized the very thing that could have healed them. I've got it, Torres said suddenly. Camp Riverside, abandoned since 2008. Private property purchased through a shell company in 2015, right next to Miller Creek. That's it, Linda whispered. That's the place. Torres was already on her feet. I'm calling for a tactical team. We move at dawn. Dawn. Sarah stood too. That's 6 hours from now. I need time to get the warrant assembled, the team coordinate with local authorities. Those children have been waiting for years. They can't wait 6 more hours. Miss Mitchell, I understand your urgency, but rushing in without preparation could get people killed, including the children we're trying to save. James put his hand on Sarah's shoulder. She's right. We need to do this properly. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to drive into those mountains herself and tear that building apart with her bare hands, but she knew they were right. 6 hours, she said through gritted teeth. Not a minute more. The team assembled at 4 a.m. Sarah and James weren't supposed to be there. Torres had ordered them to stay home to let the professionals handle it, but neither of them could sit still while children were being rescued. They parked on a fire road 2 miles from the target location, watching through binoculars as the FBI tactical team moved into position. I should be down there, Sarah said. You've done your part. You found them. Let the team bring them out. What if something goes wrong? What if the children are scared they need someone who understands what they've been through? James took her hand. They'll have that. Torres promised to call you the moment they secure the building. At 5:47 a.m., the sun began to rise over the mountains. At 5:52 a.m., Torres gave the order. Sarah watched through the binoculars as the tactical team breached the gate. Agents in body armor moved swiftly toward the main building. For a few agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then Torres's voice crackled over the radio James had borrowed. Building secured. We have children. Repeat, we have children. Medical teams move in now. Sarah dropped the binoculars. How many? 11 Torres replied. 11 children, all alive. Condition unknown. James was already starting the car. Let's go. They drove down the mountain road faster than was safe, skidding around curves, racing toward the scene. By the time they arrived, the first ambulances were already loading patients. Sarah jumped out of the car before James had fully stopped. She ran toward the building, ignoring the agents who tried to stop her. Miss Mitchell, you can't go in there. She pushed past them and entered the building. What she saw inside would haunt her for the rest of her life. 11 beds arranged in a row, 11 children ages ranging from perhaps 5 to 13. All of them thin, all of them pale, all of them barely conscious. IV stands next to each bed, feeding them the same cocktail of sedatives that had stolen years of Ethan's life. But they were alive. They were alive, and they were going to be saved. Sarah moved to the nearest bed. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with matted brown hair and hollow cheeks. Her eyes fluttered open as Sarah approached. "Who are you?" the girl whispered. "My name is Sarah. I'm here to help you." "Are you a doctor?" "No, sweetheart. I'm a mom." Sarah took the girl's hand. "What's your name?" "Lily." The girl's lip trembled. "Like the flower." Sarah's heart shattered. Emma had mentioned a friend named Lily who died. There must have been another Lily, another child lost in this nightmare. "That's a beautiful name, Lily. We're going to take you somewhere safe now, somewhere with sunshine and fresh air and good food. Would you like that?" Lily nodded weakly. "Can I have water? I like water." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "You can have all the water you want." The next 48 hours were chaos. All 11 children were transported to Stanford Children's Hospital. Teams of specialists worked around the clock to stabilize them, wean them off sedatives, assess the damage done by years of medical abuse. Sarah stayed at the hospital, sleeping in waiting rooms, coordinating with social workers, talking to children who were slowly beginning to wake up from their chemical prisons. James handled the logistics. He funded a dedicated medical wing for the rescued children. He hired lawyers to navigate the complex legal situation of children who had been officially abandoned or forgotten by the foster system. He worked with Agent Torres to trace the network of complicity that had allowed Harper to operate this facility undetected for years. On the third day, Torres called them both into her office. "We've completed our preliminary investigation," she said. "What we found is worse than we imagined." "Worse how?" Sarah asked. "The facility wasn't just housing children, it was testing on them." Torres slid a folder across her desk. Harper was running unauthorized drug trials, experimental sedatives that hadn't been approved by the FDA. He was using these children as lab rats. James grabbed the folder and began reading. His face went white. Pharmaceutical companies paid him to test drugs on children nobody would miss. 3 companies so far. We're still investigating. The total could be higher. "These are Fortune 500 companies," Sarah said, looking at the names. "Billion-dollar corporations. They knew children were being abused, and they paid for it. They paid for results. They didn't ask questions about methodology." Torres's voice was heavy with disgust. "We're building cases against all of them. This goes far beyond one corrupt doctor." James stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. "I want names. Every executive who approved these contracts, every scientist who designed these experiments, every accountant who signed the checks. I want them all." "We're working on it." "But James, this is going to take years. These corporations have armies of lawyers. They'll fight every step of the way." "Then we fight longer. We fight harder." James's voice shook with rage. "They used children as test subjects. They paid a monster to torture kids for profit. I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I will destroy every single person involved." Sarah put her hand on his arm. "James, we need to focus on the children first. Revenge can wait." He turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that scared her. A darkness that went beyond anger, a fury that threatened to consume everything in its path. "You're right," he said finally, forcing himself to breathe. "The children first." But Sarah knew this wasn't over. James Crawford had discovered a new enemy, and he would not rest until they were destroyed. 2 weeks later, the first of the rescued children spoke. His name was Marcus. He was 12 years old. He had been in the facility for 3 years since his foster family returned him to the system, and nobody asked what happened next. Sarah was sitting with him when it happened. She had been reading to him a book about ocean animals when he suddenly reached out and touched the page. "Dolphin," he said. His voice was rusty from disuse, barely audible. "That's a dolphin." Sarah's breath caught. "That's right, Marcus. That's a dolphin. I saw a dolphin once, before the bad place. My foster mom took me to the aquarium." His eyes filled with tears. "I forgot about that. I forgot about everything." "You're remembering now. That's what matters." "Will I remember more?" "You'll remember everything, sweetheart. It just takes time." Marcus looked at her with eyes that were slowly coming back to life. Are you going to leave? The other people always leave. Sarah took his hand firmly. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. That's what they all say. I'm not them. Sarah leaned closer. I'm going to be here every step of the way. When you learn to walk again, I'll be there. When you go to school, I'll be there. When you need someone to talk to at 3 a.m., I'll be there. Her voice cracked. You're not alone anymore, Marcus. None of you are. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in 3 years. 1 month after the rescue, the Crawford Foundation announced a new initiative. James stood at a podium in front of 50 journalists, Sarah beside him, and made the announcement that would define the rest of his life. Today, I'm pledging $5 billion to create the most comprehensive support system for survivors of medical abuse ever established in this country. This includes long-term medical care, educational support, job training, housing assistance, and mental health services for every child rescued from Dr. Harper's facilities, and for the thousands of other victims whose stories we are still uncovering. The room erupted with questions. James held up his hand for silence. But money alone isn't enough. These children need families. They need people who will love them, guide them, and help them become who they were always meant to be. He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. Today, I'm also announcing that my wife Sarah and I have begun the process of adopting 7 of the 11 children rescued from the mountain facility. The journalists gasped. Sarah felt James's hand find hers. Wife. He had called her his wife. They had gotten married 3 days earlier. A small ceremony in the garden with only Ethan and a few close friends present. No media, no fanfare. Just 2 people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and decided to build a life together. These children have been through hell, James continued. They deserve heaven, and we intend to give it to them. After the press conference, Sarah pulled James aside. 7 children, James, on top of Ethan. That's 8 kids. I know. Our house isn't big enough. I'm building a bigger one. We'll need staff, therapists, teachers. Already hired. Sarah stared at him. You planned all of this without telling me. I planned all of this because I know you. I know you can't stand to see those children go into the foster system that failed them before. I know you've been staying late at the hospital because you can't bear to leave them. James cupped her face in his hands. Sarah, you were born to be a mother, not to one child, to all of them. What about you? Are you ready to be a father to 8 children? I wasn't ready to be a father to one, but Ethan taught me how. James smiled. We'll figure it out together, like we always do. Sarah kissed him, not caring that journalists were still watching. I love you, James Crawford. I love you too, Sarah Crawford. The adoption process took 6 months. Every step was complicated. Every hearing was emotional. Every piece of paperwork was a reminder of how these children had been failed by every system designed to protect them. But finally, on a sunny morning in June, the final papers were signed. The Crawford family officially grew from 3 to 11. Ethan was ecstatic to have siblings. He became the unofficial welcome committee, showing each new brother and sister around the estate, introducing them to the pool, teaching them the words he had learned. Water is the best, he explained to Marcus. Water helped me talk. Maybe it can help you too. Marcus, who had progressed remarkably in the months since his rescue, smiled at the younger boy. I think you're right, Ethan. Water is pretty special. The new house was ready by August. James had designed it specifically for their expanded family. 11 bedrooms, each one decorated according to its occupants' preferences. A massive indoor pool connected to an outdoor one. Therapy rooms, art studios, music spaces. A home built not for luxury, but for healing. On the day they moved in, Sarah walked through the empty rooms with James by her side. This is really happening, she said. We're really doing this. Having second thoughts. About 1,000, she laughed. But they're all worth it. James pulled her close. 2 years ago, you walked into my office looking for a job. You were broken. I was broken. Ethan was trapped in silence. And now Now we have a family, a real family. Not perfect, not easy, but real. He kissed her forehead. You did this, Sarah. All of it started because you paid attention to a little boy that everyone else had given up on. We did this together. Together, James agreed. The children arrived one by one over the next week, each one carrying the few possessions they had accumulated in their short, difficult lives. Lily, now 7, brought a stuffed dolphin that Sarah had given her in the hospital. Marcus, now 13, brought a journal where he had started writing poems about his experiences. The twins Anna and Sophia brought matching bracelets they had made for each other during their years in the facility. Thomas brought a photograph of his birth mother, the only connection he had to a past he couldn't remember. Olivia brought a music box that played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, a gift from a nurse who had shown her kindness. Daniel brought a baseball cap from a team he had never seen play but dreamed of watching someday. And Maya, the oldest at 15, brought nothing at all. She said she didn't want to carry any reminders of where she had been. She only wanted to focus on where she was going. That first night in the new house, Sarah gathered all 11 children around the dining room table for their first meal together. I know this is scary, she said, looking at each face in turn. I know you've all been hurt by people who were supposed to protect you. I know you have every reason not to trust adults. She paused, feeling James's hand on her shoulder. But I want you to know something. This is your home now. Not a temporary placement, not a trial period. Your permanent, forever home. Her voice shook with emotion. You are our children, all of you, and nothing will ever change that. Ethan raised his hand. Can I say something? Of course, sweetheart. Ethan looked around the table at his new brothers and sisters. I was quiet for a long time. Couldn't talk. Couldn't tell anyone what I was feeling. It was really hard. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But then Sarah came, and she didn't try to fix me. She just loved me. And that's when I started to get better. He turned to Sarah, his eyes bright with love. Mommy doesn't just save kids. She makes them into family. And family means nobody gets left behind. Sarah was crying too hard to speak. James squeezed her shoulder. Let's eat, he said, his own voice rough with emotion. We've got a lot of catching up to do. 5 years passed. The Crawford Foundation grew into one of the largest child advocacy organizations in the country. They had helped over 12,000 families, rescued hundreds of children from abusive situations, and changed laws in 37 states. The pharmaceutical companies that had funded Harper's experiments were prosecuted. 3 CEOs went to prison. Billions of dollars in settlements went to victims. Vincent Harper died in prison in the 3rd year alone and forgotten. Sarah didn't feel satisfaction when she heard the news. She felt nothing at all. He had already taken up too much space in her heart. Ethan graduated from a special needs high school at 19, delivering a speech that made national news. I was born paralyzed, he told the audience. Not in my body, in my voice. For 6 years I couldn't tell anyone what I was thinking or feeling. I was trapped inside myself, screaming without sound. He paused, looking at Sarah and James in the front row. Then a woman walked into my life. She didn't have a medical degree. She didn't have special training. She just had eyes that could see what others missed, and a heart big enough to hold my pain. His voice broke. She taught me that silence isn't the end of communication. It's just the beginning. Sometimes the quietest voices have the most important things to say. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Sarah held Grace's photograph against her chest, crying tears of joy. The 11 Crawford children grew up and scattered across the country, pursuing their own dreams while staying connected to the family that had saved them. Marcus became a child psychologist, specializing in trauma recovery. Lily studied marine biology and worked to protect the oceans she had dreamed about during her darkest days. The twins opened a restaurant together, naming it Second Chances. Thomas became a photographer, capturing images of foster children to help them find families. Olivia became a music therapist, using the art form that had brought her comfort to heal others. Daniel never did become a professional baseball player, but he coached Little League and watched every game with the same wonder he had felt as a child. Maya became a lawyer, specializing in prosecuting medical abuse cases. She won every single one. And Ethan, the boy who had started it all, became an advocate for nonverbal children. He traveled the country teaching parents and professionals how to listen for the voices that couldn't speak. On the 10th anniversary of the day Sarah had first walked into the Crawford mansion, the entire family gathered at the estate for a celebration. James stood at the head of the table looking at the faces around him. 11 children, now adults with their own partners, and in some cases, their own children. Sarah beside him, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes as bright as ever. And in the center of it all, the pool that had started everything shimmering in the California sunlight. 15 years ago, James began. I was a broken man, living in a silent house, watching my son disappear day by day. I had given up hope. I had accepted that some things couldn't be fixed. He looked at Sarah. Then a woman came into my life who refused to accept that, who looked at my son and saw not a patient to be managed, but a person to be loved, who broke through every wall I had built and showed me what family really means. Sarah wiped her eyes. Even after all these years, his words still moved her. Today isn't just about celebrating the past, James continued. It's about honoring what we've become. We started as 2 broken people and 1 silent child. Now look at us. He gestured around the table. 23 people connected by love, not blood, a family built from the ruins of tragedy, proof that the darkest moments of our lives can become the foundation for something beautiful. Ethan stood up. At 25, he was tall and confident, nothing like the silent boy who had once stared at nothing from his wheelchair. I want to say something, he said. Everyone fell quiet. When I was little, I used to have dreams about drowning, being pulled under by darkness, unable to call for help. He paused. Then one day a woman took me into the water, and instead of drowning, I learned to float. Instead of sinking into silence, I found my voice. He walked around the table to where Sarah sat. He knelt beside her chair and took her hands in his. You saved me, Mom. Not just my life, my soul. You saw me when no one else did. You loved me when no one else could. You gave me a voice and a family and a future. Sarah was crying openly now. She pulled Ethan into her arms and held him tight. I was the lucky one, she whispered. You gave me my life back too. That night, after the guests had left and the children had gone to sleep, Sarah and James sat by the pool alone. The water reflected the stars above, calm and eternal. Do you ever think about Grace? James asked softly. Sarah smiled. Every day. I used to think losing her was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Now I understand that she led me here, to you, to Ethan, to all of them. She looked up at the sky. She only lived 11 days, but she gave me everything. James put his arm around her. What do you think she would say if she could see us now? Sarah thought about it for a moment. I think she would say that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just changes form. She rested her head against James's shoulder. I think she would be proud of what her mother became. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water, listening to the sounds of their sleeping children. Finally, Sarah spoke again. You know what I've learned in all these years? What? That the world is full of children waiting to be found, hidden in silence, trapped by systems that fail them, overlooked by people too busy to pay attention. She turned to look at him, her eyes filled with determination. And every single one of them deserves someone who will fight for them. James smiled. Then I guess we're not done yet. We're just getting started. The next morning, Sarah walked into her office at the Crawford Foundation to find a stack of new case files on her desk. 12 children who needed help. 12 families who were desperate for hope. She sat down, opened the first file, and began to read. Outside her window, the sun was rising over the mountains. Inside the house, 11 children were waking up to another day of safety and love. And somewhere in the world, another child was waiting to be found by someone who would pay attention. Sarah Mitchell Crawford had learned the truth that changed everything. Love is not about saving the ones who are easy to love. It is about seeing the ones who have been invisible. It is about hearing the ones who have been silenced. It is about fighting for the ones who cannot fight for themselves, and it never ever gives up.